Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Hidi Badadhaute Gopi Jana Malabha Hidi Badadhaute Yasodanantana Braja Janarana Huna Yasodananda Braja Janarana Huna Jamuna Tera Padachare Yamuna Tera Padachare Jai Hurad Amadhuva Kunya Bihari Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jai Radha Madhuva Kunya Bihari Gopi Janapalabha Iri Bharadhahuti Gopi Janapalabha Iri Bharadhahuti Yasudanandana Braja Janarana Huna Dana Braja Janaranja Yasudanandana Braja Janaranja Huna Jambuna Tira Banachahuti Yamuna Tera Banachahuti Jayuradhu Madhuva Kunna Bihari Jayuradhu Madhuva Kunya Bihari Madhuva Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidakacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Huidas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopakavata Sayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuradam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Kajai, Yamunamai Kajai, Srimati Lasi Devi Kajai, Samaveda Bhakta, Vrindi Kajai, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Bol. All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda. Om Gana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Unminitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, could someone bring me that book, Lives of the Vaishnavas over there? But that's for Srinivasa Acharya. Actually, we may not even get to him. So first I'll talk about the appearance day of Radha Raman. Radha Raman, of course, is the deity of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, had 8 Shalagram Shilas. And the way he got those Shalagram Shilas is he went to the Gandaki River, which is now in Nepal, and he was able to get the Shilas from the river. And he brought the Shilas back, and he was such a humble devotee that when he brought the Shilas back, he thought, I'm not qualified to worship Shilas. One thing I've seen nowadays in ISKCON is that sometimes people who are immature get Shalagram Shilas, and then they end up not being able to take care of the constant worship of them. And even it's unfortunate that even nowadays, if you go on eBay, you can actually buy a Shalagram Shila. It's very unfortunate. So one actually has to get permission from the spiritual master before they worship the Shilas. One has to be sure they're going to be steady for the rest of their life. Thank you very much. Steady for the rest of their life, worshiping the Shilas. And one has to make sure they're Brahminical. So it's a very high standard for worshiping Shilas. One has to be a Brahmin, a real Brahmin. So, anyway, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he was so humble, even though he had permission to get the Shilas, he thought, I'm not qualified to have the Shilas, so he brought the Shilas back, all the way back to the Gandaki River. And that's not an easy thing. So that's the point. If one can't worship the Shilas, one should go back to the Gandaki River and put them back, not just give them to some other devotee. I mean, I know one devotee with 2,000 or 3,000 Shilas because everybody gave him the Shilas because they didn't worship them properly. So it's a very serious thing, worshiping the deities. I remember when Prabhupada installed the deities, this is in Australia, Prabhupada was stating that, that my great fear is you won't be able to continue the seva, or the worship of the deities. It's a very serious thing. Worship of the deities, worship of the Shilas. It's not something that's just like some hobby that you do. So anyway, so he put the Shilas back in the Gandaki River, went all the way back, and the Shilas jumped back into his hand. And then he put the Shilas back again, and they jumped back in his hand. This happened 2 or 3 times. And then he understood that Krishna wanted to be worshipped, and he brought the Shilas back. And so one of those Shilas was called the Damodar Shila. And he was watching the other Goswamis of Vrindavan worship their deities, which, the form of the deities. And he was seeing them put their dresses on, and he was thinking, I'd really like to dress deities. And then one day a very rich man gave him deity clothes, or, cloth for deities. And he was thinking, I'd really like to worship deities. And then the next morning he wakes up and the Damodar Shila becomes the deity of Radha Raman. And that deity is still there in Vrindavan today. It wasn't taken away from Vrindavan. He wasn't taken away from Vrindavan. And beautiful deity. You actually see the portion of the original Shila on the back of the deity, if the Pujaris will let you see the back. And Prabhupada said that the standard of worship at the Radha Raman temple is the highest standard. And Prabhupada advised that many devotees go and observe what they're doing, maybe not accept all the different rituals and everything, but just see the cleanliness and punctuality which is actually far different than 90% of the other temples in Vrindavan. Uh, Many of the other temples in Vrindavan, they don't even change the clothes regularly or clean the deities. Uh, and Prabhupada said that if one doesn't take care of the deities and simply is interested in making money from the deities, he compared that to using a shalagram shila to crack nuts with. So one has to be very careful in dealing with the deities. It's also like a Brahman initiation lecture. Very careful in dealing with the deities and understand we're the servants of the deities. Not that the deities are my hobby and I get a chance to enjoy them. No, we're the servant. Just like when I go into my house, it's not my house, it's my Govardhan Shila's house. Then I offer obeisances and I understand they're the proprietor of the house. So, anyway, so today is the appearance of the Radha Raman deity, and today is the appearance also of Madhavandra Puri and Srinivasa Acharya. So we're going to talk a little bit about Madhavandra Puri. So Madhavandra Puri was considered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be the source of the symptoms of devotional service in conjugal mellow. In other words, the bhav is to anglicize a particular Sanskrit word, because in Sanskrit you don't necessarily put an S on the end. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered that anyone who is exhibiting like ecstatic symptoms of love of Krishna in the conjugal mood must somehow or other have some connection with Madhavandra Puri. And I mean, there were a few exceptions like Chandidas and others who actually, before Madhavandra Puri, exhibited these symptoms. But in general, in our Sampradaya, he was the first one to actually manifest these symptoms, specifically not only the conjugal symptoms, but the symptoms of vipralamba, separation, intense separation. And for example, when he was leaving this world, it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he was crying out, "Oh my Lord, I have not reached Mathura." He was talking about Mathura in a larger context, Mathura Vrindavan, the Mathura Mandala. And of course, we told the story the other day about Ramchandra Puri. But anyway, so it was the symptoms of intense separation from Krishna, longing to be with Krishna in Vrindavan. And then his disciple, Ishwara Puri, carried forth that same mood. And other disciples, too, carried forth that mood, like Govinda, who was also his disciple, who became... Govinda was a disciple of Ishwara Puri. And of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the same mood. So Lord Nityananda, while he was wandering around India, because he appeared way before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, met Madhavendra Puri while he was on pilgrimage. And the meeting of these two personalities was simply, for lack of a better word, amazing. They embraced each other, fell on the ground, became unconscious, and spent weeks with each other, talking about Krishna, Krishna's pastimes, and eventually, feeling great separation, they left and went on their ways. So the whole story of Madhavendra Puri was heard by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from his spiritual master, Ishwara Puri. So this is a story actually directly told by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and also Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Lord Nityananda, and Lord Nityananda also told the story. So here's the story. Once upon a time, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reached this place called Ramuna. Ramuna is where the deity of Shira Chora Gopinath is. Shira Chora Gopinath is the deity that stole sweet rice, which we'll describe the story of in a second. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reached the deity of Shira Chora Gopinath in Ramuna, the flower crown on the deity, somehow they put a crown and they made flowers. that constituted the crown, and it fell on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's head. Now, this deity of Shirachora Gopinath is quite interesting because this deity was personally carved by Lord Ramchandra. What happened was when Lord Ramchandra and Sita Devi were in the forest, but they passed through Ramuna, and in Ramuna, Sita Devi asked Lord Ramchandra, "What do you look like in the Dwarpa Yuga?" And Lord Ramchandra, without saying anything, picked up a rock, and with his arrow, with the arrow, from the bow and arrow, he carved its deity on the rock. So the deity of Shirachora Gopinath is actually a relief deity. Relief deity means flat in the back and, you understand, curved, like three-dimensional coming out in front. So that's how the deity got there. It's quite an amazing deity. And we've visited there a few times, had Mangalarati there, and tasted the kheer, or the sweet rice. They actually have the cows. It's not that they purchase milk in the marketplace, but they actually have the cows connected to the deity room. Has anyone here been there? No one in the temple room has been there. The deity room has like a wall in the back, and right next to that wall is the Goshala. So the cows are actually like this close to the deity room, just to the other part of the wall. And that's how they get the milk. And these cows are amazing cows. They're servants of the deities. In many places, you'll find different animals that are serving the deities. I mean, in South India, of course, you have these elephants that serve the deities, and there's many stories about these elephants, that the elephant actually just served the deity his whole life. Then at the end of his life, he just offered obeisances to the deity and went back to home, back to God. You can turn that off because it's a little disturbing. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reached Ramuna, and then the flower crown of Gopinath fell on his head, and then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to tell the story. And here's the story of Madhavandra Puri, told personally by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, related in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said, once upon a time, Madhavandra Puri reached Govardhan, and he circumambulated Govardhan, took his bath in Govindakund. And so Madhavandra Puri was on the highest stage of sannyas life. He was a Paramahamsa. Now, the Paramahamsa does not ask for food unless he comes down to the platform of Madhyama Acarya in order to preach Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was doing that. But he had taken a specific vow. He wouldn't ask anyone for food. If food came, he would eat. If food didn't come, he wouldn't eat. There's different stages of sannyas. And actually, many of the stages have something to do with food. The first stage of sannyas is kutichak. And then in that stage, one, because he's so concerned about eating, I guess it's such a big concern. These new sannyasi resides on the outskirts of the village that he was previously living in. And then his family, his wife cooks for him still, but his sons bring him the food every day. And so then after that, he thinks, well, it's not so good to be so much connected to the family anymore. So after that, he starts to go from house to house, and he does something called Madhukari. In Madhukari, he actually begs, Madhukari means like a bee, you understand, like a honey bee, madhu. Like in Hindi, madhumukhi, not mukha, madhumukh, which is like which means a honey bee, a honey fly, literally a honey fly in Hindi. So he's like a bee. He goes from one flower, one house to another, and asks for one chapati. in each house, one roti in each house. It's not that he asked for a lot. So, so then, after a while, he figures, well, maybe that's not the best idea. And then he becomes a Parvajakarya, which he wanders around. And, people naturally give him prasadam. He can even ask, but he doesn't go house to house asking for prasadam. And then finally, Paramahamsa. So Madhavendra Puri was in the Paramahamsa stage of sannyas. So he didn't ask anyone for food. And there he was at Govardhan, not eating. And so what happened is, because Krishna takes care of everyone at Govardhan, Krishna came up and he gave him some kheer, some milk or kheer. And Madhavendra Puri questioned him. He said, who are you? And he said, just I'm a boy from the village. No one fasts in our village. And the ladies saw you. They saw that there was some sannyasi there, and they thought, let's give him some prasadam. So the boy left. Madhavendra Puri actually kept the pot, because the boy left before bringing back the pot. And that night, Madhavendra Puri had a dream, and in that dream, that boy appeared again and revealed that he was Krishna. So from that day forward, Madhavendra Puri broke the pot into little pieces, and each day he would eat one of the pieces of the pot because it was Krishna's remnant. Not only the food inside, the milk or the kheer inside, but the pot itself. So in the dream that Madhavendra Puri had, this little boy who was Krishna took Madhavendra Puri by the hand to the bush where the deity of Nachi, or Gopal, as he was called then, now he's called Nachi or Sri Nachi, was, and instructed him to get the deity out, because the deity was hidden in the bushes because the Muslims were previously attacking, and they were actually keeping the deities from being broken by the Muslims, because sometimes the Muslims would go to the temple and they would break the deity and they would into pieces, and actually put the pieces in the roadway so people would step on the deity or the previous pieces of the deity. And sometimes the Muslims would disinter the bodies of great saints and just tear them apart or feed them to the dogs. So these things happen. So therefore, the Vaishnavas in Vrindavan and all over Braj would disinter the bodies themselves of the great saints and actually cremate the bodies. And that's why many of the samadhis are actually cremations or ashes of the previous acharyas. So, anyway, so Madhavendra Puri was taken by the hand, shown where Gopal was in the bushes. And also, he was instructed by Gopal to construct a temple on top of Govardhan Hill. And we actually showed that in the slideshow on Sunday. And we also showed the place where Gopal was discovered. That was called the Gopal Prakat Stali. That means the place where Gopal appeared. And Krishna, in the form of Gopal, little coward boy, he is a little coward boy, he said, my name is Gopal. He even gave himself his name. And I was installed by Bhadra. Bhadra, as I mentioned on Sunday, is the great-grandson of Krishna who came to Vrindavan, who installed the main deities that are worshipped in Vrindavan. And then he describes that he was hid from the Muslims. So then, when Madhavendra Puri woke up or came to external consciousness from his dream, he went to the village and he gathered all the people to rescue the deity. And they actually went in with choppers and found the deity, took him to the top of the hill, and the deity revealed to Madhavendra Puri that he was there so long that it was very hot and he needed to be cooled down. So they did the Abhishek with water from, it's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, 900 pots. And there was a gigantic festival of Abhishek, and not only water from 900 pots, there was Panchagavya, that means the 5 products of the cow, and Panchamrita, which also is the like also yogurt and milk, and then sugar and ghee and other things like that. And then they offered food to Gopal, and Madhavendra Puri initiated some Brahmins to take care, Brahmin pujaris to take care. And when all the villagers in the neighboring areas heard about what was happening, they also wanted to participate. So this same ceremony went on again and again and again for many, many days, because this was just like an amazing festival that everyone wanted to do the Abhishek. So they had, sometimes in Nugaloka, the Abhishek goes on for an hour or two when we have people. So this is an Abhishek that went on for days and days and days and days. And also an offering of grains and sweets and whatever else the deity ate, fruits and everything else. It went on for many days. And so after some time, the deity worship was going on nicely. And 2 years later, Madhavendra Puri had a dream. And in that dream, Gopal revealed to him that I am still hot. You know, even after all this bathing, Abhishek and everything. So please get me some sandalwood. And so the sandalwood was, at that time, was from the Malaya provinces, but it was coming from Jagannath Puri. That's where they kept it. So Madhavendra Puri at that point, went towards Bengal on the way to Jagannath Puri. And in Bengal, when he went to the Navadvip area, he initiated Advaitacharya. So he's Advaitacharya's spiritual master. And then after that, because going south from Mayapur, Navadvip area, you get to Ramuna, which, as I mentioned, is the place of Shirachora Gopinath. And when he was in Ramuna, he asked about the offerings to Shirachora Gopinath. And the reason he asked about the offerings is not that he was thinking, like most people thinking during the Sunday feast, you know, when are we going to eat? Is there enough paneer in the sabji? You know, many people are thinking like that. But he was thinking, I want to find out what they're offering to Shirachora Gopinath so I can offer the same thing, because he also heard that they were offering this substance called Amrita Keli. Amrita Keli is like a condensed milk product, and it is Amrita, nectar. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing taste to this condensed milk. I mean, it's from the cows that are devotees, offered to Shirachora Gopinath. And if you go to the temple, you actually get these little tiny pots. They're about this big, clay pots full of this shira or kira. And I remember on our bus trips, we bought so many of those pots with us, and some of the devotees wanted to preserve it, so they dried it out in the sun, and dried the kira out in the sun, and they were eating it for many days. It was just an amazing experience. Also, they also provide regular prasadam, too, for the deities, or bhoga for the deities. So when we were there, we just pay them a little extra. And we had giant plates of prasadam. I mean, all sorts of opulent prasadam that were there. It's interesting when you're, at least in the old days, I don't know if it's still the case now. In the old days, if you were touring India, you didn't have to worry about where you were going to eat. Originally, when we started our bus tours, we would take cooking implements with us, you know, big stove, gas tanks, and everything like that in the bus. But then we discovered wherever we went, if we just gave the temple a few dollars, or rupees in this particular case, there would be mountains of prasadam, unlimited prasadam, particularly Jagannath Puri, Ramuna, actually anywhere, Vishakhapatnam, like we were talking about yesterday, Mangalgiri, and these other places. There was no lack of prasadam. Because in India, practically everyone likes to cook. Prabhupada would say, very interesting, he says, only a lazy man can't cook. So the men, especially, practically all the men are good cooks. Like you see Prabhupada, he was what we would call a rasacharya. Rasacharya means taste, you know, the acharya of different tastes. So the way Prabhupada brought many devotees to the Krishna conscious movement was by his cooking, distribution of prasadam. It was amazing. And Prabhupada would just like stay in the kitchen, and in such a short time, there was one story I was just listening to that Prabhupada asked Tamal Krishna Maharaj, was there a feast prepared for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur? And there wasn't a feast prepared, or just some light stuff. And Prabhupada went in the kitchen in 1 hour. He actually prepared this most amazing, opulent feast, so many preparations, and the whole kitchen was clean afterwards. Prabhupada was amazing. I mean, so in India, everyone knows how to cook. At least all the men know how to cook. And so of course, I don't know if it still applies now, but if you ever go for a tour in India, you just pay some money at the local temple and you can eat like a king or a queen. So anyway, here we go. So Madhavendra Puri asked about the offerings because he wanted to make some of the same things for Gopal. And he heard about this Amrita Keli. 12 pots are offered every day to Gopinath. It's called Gopinath Kshira. And Madhavendra Puri was thinking, I should taste this to actually see what it's like. Not only do you learn the recipe, a good cook doesn't just learn a recipe, watches or reads a recipe from a recipe book, like Jamuna's cookbook. But a good cook tastes, after offering to Krishna, tastes to see how it came out and what it's like. So a good cook can adjust things the next time he or she cooks based upon the taste and also the feedback from the devotees. But Madhavendra Puri was ashamed of thinking of eating the offering because the offering hadn't been made at that particular point, or was just being made. And so being so ashamed, and actually he wasn't thinking of eating it for sense gratification. He was thinking of eating it so he could serve Gopal. There was no thought of sense gratification, but still he was so humble thinking it was sense gratification. So he left the temple, went to the market, and he was in the market chanting the holy names of the Lord. There's a market very close to the temple. It's right outside the gate of the temple. There's a square there where there's a little market. And the temple has beautiful gates and also dioramas inside of Krishna's pastimes. Actually, really beautiful dioramas. So then, Madhavendra Puri, of course, was resting a little bit. And that night, the priest of the deities, the Brahmin, had a dream. And in that dream, Gopinath revealed to the priest that I have actually stolen some sweet rice from Madhavendra Puri. I've kept it under my cloth. Like you have the deities, sometimes they have real big cloths. So somehow or other, there was a pot of sweet rice under the deity's cloth. That means the deity actually took it, because when you make an offering, you don't put it under the deity's cloth. You put it on the table in front of the deities. You understand? So it's not that the pujari accidentally left it on the altar. It was actually taken off of the eating plate, because it's like, here we have an eating plate, and that's where we put the offering. So it was taken off the eating plate, and the deity just stuck it under his cloth. He said, I've actually stolen this from Madhavendra Puri. He's in the marketplace, so go find him and give him this shira. And so the pujari went to the marketplace. Of course, first he bathed, went into the deity room. He went to the marketplace and said, where is Madhavendra Puri? He's the most fortunate person. Gopinath has stolen some sweet rice for you. So Madhavendra Puri woke up in an ecstasy, ate, washed the pot, and also that pot he kept for the rest of his life and ate pieces of it. And then he left Ramuna on the way to Jagannath Puri. And in Jagannath Puri, he collected sandalwood and camphor, and he was given 2 servants and also the paperwork so that it would be all right for him to carry this particular sandalwood, because there were many guards in different provinces as you were going from one place in India to another. So actually, it's like that too. when you go from one state to another, there's actually a tax department at each entry of each state. Especially if you're up on a bus. You know, if you have a car, it's not a problem. But if you have a bus, you have to stop there for hours and just like pay your taxes and bribe the guy at the border of the state. So, so on the way back, he stayed or went to Ramuna. And in Ramuna, he had a dream. Gopal in Vrindavan told him, I've already accepted this sandalwood, so use it on Gopinath, and that'll be the same as giving it to me. And this way, Gopal wanted to save Madhavendra Puri the trouble because of all the Muslims in the area and the traveling and carrying all this heavy sandalwood and camphor. So Madhavendra Puri gave us this very, very nice verse. And this verse is, of course, Madhavendra Puri is the spiritual master of Ishwara Puri, which we already mentioned. So we'll end with this. This is a verse spoken by Radharani, and this is the verse that he recited as he was leaving this material world. And I will read the verse. Aidena dayadra natahe matura nata kadavalokyase hadaya twadaloka kattara loyata vramyati kya karomyaham. O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Because of my not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. O most beloved one, what shall I do now? So those are Radharani's words that he was reciting as he was leaving this material world to go back to Godhead and serve Krishna. So that's Madhavendra Puri, and we have about 2 minutes left, so I think we just take questions at this point. Anybody have questions here in Nugaloka about Madhavendra Puri? No? So a little bit about Srinivasa Acharya. Srinivasa Acharya was one of 3 devotees. Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamananda were second generation from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srinivasa Acharya was the one who started the book distribution movement. And he brought the books of the Goswamis, which were hand-copied. He and Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamananda brought the books in an ox cart to Bengal. And those books were stolen by King Virhamvir. They were in a chest. They were handwritten books. And because King Virhamvira had some astrologers who told him there were very valuable things in this particular chest. Later on, when King Virhamvira opened up this chest, he discovered they were books, and he felt very guilty about it. And one day, King Virhamvira, even though he was a dacoit, was having Bhagavatam class, and Srinivasa Acharya came to that Bhagavatam class and corrected the priest who was giving the Bhagavatam class. And later on, King Virhamvir accepted an initiation from Srinivasa Acharya, gave him the books, of course, and made his whole kingdom, Vana Vishnupur, completely Krishna conscious. He made it illegal for anyone not to chant their rounds, or not to be Krishna conscious, at least. I don't know if he made sure everyone chanted rounds. But so the whole kingdom was Krishna conscious, and Srinivasa Acharya also was married, and he had children, and one of his daughters actually became a great spiritual master in our Vaishnava Sampradaya. So a great, great personality, always associated. Well, his primary disciple was Ramchandra Chakravarti, who was an intimate associate of Narottama Das Thakur. So I think we have to end now.
No, I heard one place is that when the king said, took him as a spiritual master, and said, "What can I do to adopt you?" And Srinivasa said, "How about give me the books back?"
Okay. Set up. Krishna Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Son founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Ki Jai. Rem say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Radha Krishna Gopakavada Sayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giddy Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shimani Lasti Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Hari. So, let's read the translation. When will that opportune moment come to me when I shiver upon chanting the name of Lord Gauranga? When will I cry while chanting Hare Krishna? When will I receive the causeless mercy of Lord Nityananda so that my desires for material enjoyment become insignificant? When will my mind be purified of material anxieties and desires so that I can understand Vrindavana? When shall I be very eager to study the books left by the 6 Goswamis so that I can understand the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna? The lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis are my only shelter. In constant separation from them I remain. Narottamadas, Narottamadas Thakur Ki Jai. Let me just see if anyone has any questions first before we... Okay. Do any of you on the internet have any questions? Questions? Nalini Kant?
Hare Krishna Gurudev Dandat Pranam.
So what's the question?
Gurudev, sometimes some people, when we glorify the deities, and that they are self-manifested deities and they just appeared to receive service from us and give us mercy, and it is difficult. They don't believe that somebody would have carved them and things like that. How do we answer to them?
Well, then we don't tell the stories to them. They're rascals.
Okay.
It's just like, we can explain the deities because people don't have, many people don't have faith in deities. They explain it very simply using the mailbox analogy that Srila Prabhupada gave. That when the post office authorizes a particular box to be a mailbox, you can drop your letter into it. I don't know if they still have mailboxes, haven't seen them for a long time. But in the old days, they had mailboxes, and you drop your letter into the mailbox, and it has the same effect as the original post office. So it's authorized. And Krishna, another point Prabhupada made is that Krishna can transform matter to spirit and spirit to matter, just like an expert electrician can transmute electrical energy into heating energy or cooling energy. Anyway, I don't really want to get into the stories of deities self-manifesting with people who are not understanding Krishna consciousness, or not believing in the supremacy of God, that God can do anything he wants. They think that God can do whatever I let him do. Okay. You understand? God has, certain limits. I was listening to a class this morning Prabhupada was giving, and I had some realizations about this. Prabhupada said that basically he was referring to the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna said, the absolute truth is that from which everything comes. And then he was talking about how Krishna is the cause of all causes. So, I've heard that many, many times before, but I just it really blew my mind, so to speak, using a hippie expression, when I was thinking the cause of all causes, everything we have experience of has some cause. How can someone or something be the cause of everything else and not have any cause of itself? It's really an amazing thing. So that's Krishna. Unless one has that faith, then they won't understand too much. So just give them some prasadam.
Okay. Gurudev.
Okay. Yeah, one more question.
Okay.
You should be
Gurudev.
sleepy now.
Yes, Gurudev. Gurudev, regarding Narsingadev
After 11
Leela,
o'clock at night, his time. Yeah, what's that?
Narsingadev Leela, did it
Yeah.
happen on the Earth planet or was it in
No, it happened
Swargalok?
on another planet, not on the Earth planet.
So when we hear Katha about Narsingadev appeared for this Leela in South India and then he came.
Well, just like there's embassies of different countries uh, that, there's different, let you go into an embassy, the laws of that particular country apply rather than the laws of where the embassy is apply. So Krishna can manifest like that Leela, even though the Leela didn't happen on the Earth planet, Krishna can actually manifest a location that is basically non-different from the Leela on the Earth planet,
Okay,
if he wants
okay,
to. Okay, I think we have to end now because the natives are getting restless here. So we have to do the Shikshashtaka.
okay.
What?
Gurudev, thank you.
You need to go to bed. I mean, because if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to get, he's a doctor. He's going to get infected, You got to keep your immune system up. He's working with patients every day. I wish I had more patients. Not the same type you have. But all right. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.